Good evening. Catholic leaders all across Texas named hundreds of priests who've been credibly accused of preying on children.
And San Antonio had more accused priests than any other part of the state. A new report names 56 priests and deacons in our area, with a total of 140 claims of abuse.
These allegations date back to the year 1940. The most recent claim came back in 2008. And tonight, local Catholic leaders hope to move forward from this sex abuse scandal.
But what about victims and their families? For that, let's go live to Eyewitness News reporter Henry Ramos. Henry?
Jeff and Deborah, tonight, a San Antonio mother whose son was a victim of a predator.
He kept saying the priest was at the end of his bed and he couldn't sleep.
Barbara Garcia Bolin is recalling the horrifying nightmares her son Eduardo had all the time.
My son Eduardo was 16 years old when he was sexually abused by clergy Carlos Lozano here in San Antonio at St. Anthony Seminary.
The year was 1993. Eduardo is no longer here. He took his own life 4 years later.
We have been struggling to go on to live each day.
Carlos Lozano's name is in the report released Thursday by the Archdiocese of San Antonio. He sexually abused several students. Lozano died in prison.
Where was God when my son was being raped by one of his own people? You know, where was God when my son was hanging by that rope? I thought he could do miracles.
While she has lost her faith, Garcia Bolin says her son would be proud of her today for speaking out. However, she feels the list is simply not enough.
I think that there needs to be a deeper investigation. I think our district attorney and our attorney generals needs to do their own investigation.
She does feel this report will help victims who are scared to come forward.
If we can get the names out there, there's a chance that something can still be done.
People had been harmed.
Catherine Stone is chair of the Lay Commission. Its 6 members were tasked to review the Archdiocese procedures of receiving and addressing claims of sexual abuse of minors.
It was the motivator for everyone on the commission. Let's make things right for survivors and safe for children.
Now, Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Sierra said another allegation was brought up yesterday that dates back decades ago. He does expect other survivors to come forward. He also made it very clear that none of the names released today are currently within the Archdiocese here in San Antonio. Jeff?
Henry, thank you for that live report. As Henry referenced, 16 Catholic bishops all across the state agreed last fall to release their reports today. That local independent commission charged with reviewing the report concluded that the current procedures and policies regarding sexual abuse against minors within the church are sound, and they made only very minor recommendations for change, including more uniform written policies to ensure, quote, a safe environment for children, unquote, and a standard intake form to handle future allegations.
Tonight, the Bexar County District Attorney says these allegations have to be investigated by law enforcement, but he warns some cases may be too old to prosecute. Quote, our hands are tied if the law says their cases are beyond the statute of limitations. Unfortunately, if a case is too old, we have to abide by the law, end quote.